Welcome today. My name is Chris Williams, and I'm going to be talking to you about the 2021 fall reporting that's going to be taking place in SDRR. I am the program consultant in the Office of Assessment and Accountability, and look forward to presenting to you today about data review. So let's begin. Now, why do we need the data review? We need the data review for it to be our final opportunity to review and verify our data before it's publicly released in the school report card. And we have several steps that we have to go through before we even get to this point. So we'll review all the steps that we had to get to when we talk about on the next slide, understanding the process. This will be a short and focused review, and what you're going to be doing during data review is looking at your student listings for access and alternate access for ELs. You're going to also look at K-Prep and alternate assessment student listings. And you will also see cohort data for 4-year and 5-year that you will be able to see that as well during this time, during this data review process. We do want to make sure that this is a limited effort, for our schools and districts, because we know you are going to be opening, reopening your schools and starting that in August. So we just want to make sure that you are prepared and know exactly what to do during data review and make this a smooth transition to be able to get your data and start your school year. Let's talk about understanding the process of this whole, for getting ready for data review. The first thing is getting your rosters right. And in SDRR, we had rosters open throughout the year. And you'll notice that on the screen that, we did have the access and the alternate access that was open from, usually it was, January through March. But, we had a different window this year. So, that started in March because of, we were still in the pandemic. And so we had to, extend our window for access. So, that roster window started in March, and, it went through, May. And then we also had our spring rosters, for that you saw the access rosters again, as well as our K-Prep and our alternate assessment rosters were open during that time. And that was from April to June. And then we had cohort that was open back in February through July. And so we had, that time you were able to go in and make any changes, to your rosters. Demographics, of course, hit back to Infinite Campus. And so, you had to make sure that that you made the changes. And then if those changes were reflected the next day in the SDRR, and then you were able to upload any of your non-participation for in SDR at that time, and also to be able to mark your accommodations if you had any students who had an IEP or a program services plan. And then once that process has closed, that closed back in June, and then now we're to the data review and cleanup. And so that's our last step to make individual changes to the student level data, and then also request any non-participations if needed. And then once this closes on August the 13th, then we will move into our QC day that is tentatively scheduled for September 8th. And then that will lead to accurate reporting in the school report card. So now let's look at those particular timelines for all of this. Now we do have data review. We sent out in Monday DAC email this past Monday to confirm that the data review would happen in SDRR for August the 6th through the 13th. It will close at 12 noon on the 13th for new tickets. And so that'll be the last time you could submit any changes. And then what we will do is once it, at 12 noon, we will also be sending out any information to our DACs, our district assessment coordinators, to let you know that, hey, look, we need to make sure that these tickets are resolved. So be looking for that to come on that 13th. Then once SDRR closes on 13th and SDRR, which is our student data review and roster application, then we will move into what we call quality control day. And that is our review. We will have, spreadsheets for you to be looking at again. And it'll have all the changes that, any changes that you made during data review will be reflected in those spreadsheets. And you will, and the way to be able to get to that, you will log into the KDE applications login. There will also be a Google form that you will fill out during that day. It will have steps for you, how to complete the quality control review on September 8th. And keep in mind, when we get to quality control day, our review of that on September 8th, you're not able to make any individual changes during that time. This, you will be looking at big systemic issues that, were all of my, mail, or, I'm missing a lot, all my IEP students, etc. So those are those big systemic issues that you'll be looking at. And then once that closes on September 8th, and remember, for that QC day, it still says it's tentative because, we have to get through the data review process and see how that goes. And then we will be sending out to confirm that September 8th for you for QC day. And then once that finishes, then we will move into releasing that to the media and the data for that information, and then have a public release. And our public release will be our public reporting that will happen in the school report card. So be looking for those timelines, and you will notice that the media release and public release are to be determined, and we will send that closer to those times to let you know the next steps. Now, let's talk about what our priorities are going to be for this data review that we're going to be having August the 6th through the 13th. Your first priority is to look at your demographics. And you're going to look at your demographic information on your student listings in SDRR. And your demographics are going to be as the first day of the 14-day test window is when those demographics were pulled from the rosters to be able to put into data review. You're going to be also checking over your IEP students, your with students with accommodations, also your program services, your EL students who have a program services plan. You're also going to be checking your lunch status. And then also you're going to be confirming your ethnicity and race categories also on the student listings in SDRR. You'll be able to mark any accommodations for students with an IEP or, for our ELs, the PSP, Program Services Plan. And you will also be able to resolve any non-participations that you have for your students without test results. You'll still be able to file those in SDRR. And remember that your non-participations are by test. And so you'll see some differences between what you see on Access versus what you'll see for K-Prep. And then you'll be able, during data review, you'll be able to make any of the, those changes to demographics right on the screen in the student listing. And then when you make those changes, if you make any changes to demographics, you always want to go back to Infinite Campus and make sure it is correct there. So it's a little bit different process when it comes to data review, because during the roster phase, you had to make those changes in IC, Infinite Campus, and then those would be reflected the next day in SDRR. But during data review, that process is reversed. So what you will do is you'll make them straight into the student listings when you log into the website, and we'll talk about that more in depth of logging in and what the process for that is. And you also see the link to be able to log in to get to SDRR. Through the KD login application on the KD website. So once you have made those, if you made any demographic changes, you also want to go back to IC and make sure it's correct in there. And then you can, like I said, upload in like medical, the one that you'll be able to upload into SDRR for non-participations that you'll have to have a form to fill out will be a medical non-participation. So if you're looking at that second process, which is your participation rate, that will show, that will be in the KD applications login, just like SDRR will be, and you'll be able to download, you'll be able to get to the spreadsheets through that KD applications login and check your participation status for your students using those spreadsheets. And you will be able to see for those, let's talk about what you will see when you get to those spreadsheets. Now, the data review process, you'll see that it does have the spreadsheets that will be available in the KD applications login. Those spreadsheets, what you'll do is you'll go to the KD web applications site. And what you'll do is when you log in, you'll log in on the right side if you've already gone through that process that we talked to you about of the new login process, so that way onto that secure web application site to get to the spreadsheets. Because we did a training on that and back in June to talk about that single sign-in that you'll be able to get in to do this work. And when you go to that single login on that secure applications login site, you'll be able to log into not only and get the spreadsheets, but you'll also be able to get to SDRR and see you only need one password to be able to get in instead of having multiple passwords. And remember that, to get access to this, you always want to go through your WAPOC, which is your Web Applications Administrator point of contact in your district. And if you don't know who that person is in your district, you can go to Open House and be able to see who your WAPOC is for your district. so that way they can get you access, so that way when you do get to that site, you'll be able to access both the spreadsheets and SDRR with just that single login. And then once you get in, you're going to you'll see two things. You'll see your underneath student data detail will be your spreadsheets at this point, and there should be two things that you're going to be looking at on those spreadsheets. You'll have a tab that has one that will say graduation, and that will be your cohort information for your 4-year and 5-year. And then you will also see test, your test. And that one is your tested data, that it will show, who participated and who didn't for those. And then you will also later on that week be able to, starting on August the 10th, will get more of your summary data that you will see, not only your EL information, but you also see your graduation rate. You'll see K-Screen starting on August the 10th, that information. You'll see your K-Prep NAPD, Novice Apprentice Proficient Distinguished. You'll see your school climate and safety data, and then also the ACT data. That will not be when it first opens on August the 6th, but that summary, that aggregated data, you will be able to see on August the 10th. So just be looking, you'll be looking at 2 sets of spreadsheets during this data review time. First one will have your graduation, and then it will also have your test, of your students. And then later on August the 10th, then you will see your aggregate data. Then in SDRR, you will make any changes to your students in the SDRR application. And then let's talk about that data that's available underneath that student data detail and also in your rosters. Now, for SDRR, the data that's going to be available in SDRR is the roster information that we loaded and matched from our vendor, the test data for, access, alternate access, and then K-Prep, and then alternate assessment data. You will be able to see your student listings of your students in there. And what we did is that, we also matched what you had during spring rosters to what we received from the vendor, whether you did it paper pencil or did it, on all online. That data, if you forgot to add a student, to the roster that wasn't on the roster, but we received test data from the vendor, then those students will appear on your rosters in SDRR. We added those to that. Also, you will be able to make changes made during the roster window last spring will be reflected in data review. So if you made any changes to your demographics, those should be reflected at this time when it opens. Also, if you filed any non-participations in SDRR, for any of your students, that will show that, or any changes to your accommodations that would show from the spring rosters into data review. Remember, data review is your opportunity to review and verify student data before QC Day. That happens September 8th. Remember, there will not be any scores in SDRR. So, you know, this year's data will be a little bit different than what you normally saw a couple of years ago when we had accountability. But because, you know, we got a waiver for accountability, you will only see your tested data reflected for this year. And that will be what will be reported also in the school report card as well. So when you look at that aggregate data coming on August the 10th, which will be after, you know, SDRR has already been open, you will get that data will also be what you will see during QC day, and any changes that you made during data review will be reflected during that QC day as well. But remember, when you get, this will be your last opportunity to make any individual student changes to your data. And like I said, here are the suggested steps. What you're going to do in SDRR is you'll be able to make any demographic changes, request non-participations if needed. And then you will also get on the KDE applications login. You'll get your secure information. Those will be spreadsheet that you'll download from the application underneath student data detail. It'll have your particular district as well as all your school level data within that spreadsheets. Because remember what I said, no scores will be in SDRR. So you'll want to look at those spreadsheets. You'll filter to identify students who maybe need resolution, and to be able, when you filter on the spreadsheets underneath student data detail, you'll be able to go in and make any changes in SDRR. You don't make them on the spreadsheet. You have to go into SDRR and request it, you know, change, you know, do those changes there. Now let's talk about those student participation rates. You know, when we talk about student participation rates, it's students who didn't attempt the test or have an approved non-participation in SDRR will be reflected in a lower participation rate in the summary spreadsheet, regardless of your instructional type. And remember, our instructional types were, you know, in-person, hybrid, or virtual. Also, in the past, to meet federal participation rate, the lowest score was applied to school and reports for students who did not test. With our federal waiver from the 95% participation rates in school accountability this year, we will not apply the lowest score for students who did not test. Therefore, your aggregate data that you'll receive on August the 10th, you know, those spreadsheets will be in that secure web, you know, application that you downloaded that you'll get to, and it'll be underneath student data detail as well. And so therefore, your aggregate data for schools, districts, and for the state is based on students who attempted the test and did not have an approved non-participation. So your school or your district participation rate is based on students who tested or attempted to test at their location. It will be, you know, because of the federal waiver for participation rate and school accountability, you know, you're not, it'll not have your 100-day students. It'll just be your tested students. So like I said, it's a little bit different this year than it has been, you know, 2 years ago when we did have accountability. So just keep that in mind. It'll be your tested data and at those particular locations. New for this year for K-Prep and alternate K-Prep, you know, during our roster phase, your participation rates will be by content area, because back at rosters you were able to do non-participations by test for K-Prep, and this is for K-Prep and alternate K-Prep only, not for access. Those participation rates are reported by each content area. So you'll be able to see your students who participated in reading, mathematics, science, and writing for that school as a whole, and your student demographic groups. And some of your, student demographic groups, it could be, your students with disabilities, those student demographic groups, your race and ethnicity, those will also be in those student demographic groups as well, and there will be etc. So just want to let you know that to be looking at you'll be able to see the participation rates by each content area for that school. Now, let's talk about, this is the screenshot that you're wanting to know how to get to everything. This is our our login on the KDE website that you will get to, and this is the training that I was talking about earlier, that it has the single sign-in login. So on the right-hand side, if you're already signed in with your Microsoft account, etc., and you're already logged in on your computer, you would log in on the right. When you click on that, it will take you to your student data detail to download your spreadsheets for graduation and your test information at this time on the 6th. And then you will come back to this also on August the 10th and get your aggregated data as well underneath student data detail. But remember, aggregate data doesn't come until the 10th of August. So we start this SDRR process for data review August the 6th. So you will be well into looking at spreadsheets for graduation and test and be working in SDRR until that aggregate data is available to you. Also, when you log in and get to your spreadsheets, and you'll notice that this is, when you get the PowerPoint, that is a live link. It'll take you, if you click on it in the PowerPoint, it'll take you directly to this login page on the KDE website that you will get the applications that you're going to need for student data detail for your spreadsheets and to log into SDRR. So we've kind of made it a little bit more convenient for you if you're already logged in to be able to get to this information instead of having to remember, now what password do I have, to get to the, the login application on the KDE website, and then, my SDRR password. You don't have to remember that SDRR password anymore. Like I said, if you've already logged into this already this year and went through the process that we discussed back in June during the DAC webcast, the monthly DAC webcast, we had that. It is still available to you, as well as the Monday DAC email. This past Monday, we went through and let you know about that single sign-in to be able to get to this, to all the applications. And we also sent you the link to that all in the Monday DAC email. So don't worry if you've forgotten something, you can still be able to, go back to Monday and be able to catch up and be ready for when SDRR opens this week, on the 6th. Now, once you, have, clicked into, the SDRR application on the KDE, login application, It's going to be just like you've always seen. And for those that are new, you're going to see this screen. It's called Welcome or our homepage. And on this page, you're going to see several things. You're going to see the latest announcements. There will be a huge box at the top that'll say latest announcements. Those are very important to tell you what's going on during this time. Also, you will see what is going to be open, which is cohort and data review. And people go, well, Chris, what if I forgot to download, my rosters from spring? Can I still get to those? Yes. And how to get to those spring rosters is you go to the closed on your screen, and you will click on closed, and then it will have your rosters, spring rosters, where you'll be able to download and get to those if you forgot to print those out back in when they closed it back in June. And so now what's going to be open is, like I said, cohort. You'll be able to go and look at your 4-year and 5-year cohort student listings. You'll be able to see any ticket listings that if you've submitted any changes, see that on your ticket listings, as well as, be able to download this information during this data review. You'll also be able to get into data review, to be able to see your student listings for access, alternate access for your ELs, for your English learners. You will also see your K-Prep and alternate K-Prep student listings. And you will also be able to see any, if you submit any changes in SDRR, you'll be able to see those ticket listings. And once this closes on the 13th, for both of this work in SDRR, you want to make sure that you download not only your student listings, but your ticket listings, and then transfer, because sometimes, districts transfer, your students who would have been, 100 days. But remember, our focus is not on 100 days. Our focus for this will be on our tested students. And those locations where they tested. The next screen is when you click on, for example, data review up at the top, it takes you down to this particular part. And this is where you're going to get to your student listings as well. You can also get it from the previous screen by clicking on student listings, and it takes you straight into the student listings. But if you want to know like what your tasks are and things like that, and know what I'm supposed to be doing during SDRR, during this time in SDRR during data review, you'll want to click down from data review, and then it jumps you down to exactly your SDRR task list on the left, as well as quick links, and to get to your student listings, also to download your information, after you've made all your changes, and then before it closes, and then you'll be able to see tickets. And we'll go through each part of this and what you're supposed to be doing individually for each one of these. So let's start out with our SDRR task list. Now, this is optional. We do not make this mandatory, but people usually will say, well, what am I supposed to be doing in SDRR during, this data review process? Well, we have it optional for you, the different tasks that you'll do. And of course, what you're going to do is, look at, students who were enrolled during your window that did not take the assessment as non-participation. You'll upload, scanned copies of the, if you need a medical form, a non-participation, you have to upload that particular form into SDRR. and then add any additional, relevant information in the text box after you upload that. And you're probably saying, well, Chris, where can I get my medical? Because I may be a new DAC or a new BAC, building assessment coordinator. Well, you would get those on the KD website. Off of our KD website, there is forms, or you can go to the assessments, which is KPrep, and get to this particular medical non-participation form if you needed it for a student. And like I said, if you forgot to do it back in the spring, you still have opportunity to do non-participations during this time. And remember, those non-participations are by test. And the reason I say that, because, there's different ones. I know, medical non-participation are the same for all 4 of those. But for example, for access, we have what we call a non-participation of, IFEP, which is initially fully English proficient. And that's off of the screener. And then we have RFEP, which is read fully English proficient. And that is, students who had already exited from access and should not have been tested this year. And then, you'll double check your information. You'll also update, any changes that you make in SDRR. You also want to go back to Infinite Campus and make sure that is reflected in there, because when you go in and make any changes to demographics, guess where we're going to go? We're going to go back to Infinite Campus and look at this information to make sure it's updated, that's there before we approve that. So make sure that as you submit, changes to us, that it is both in SDRR and in IC. Make any changes to your student level different demographics. You'll be able to mark, yes or no for students who have an IEP or EL status. Any student who had that had accommodations back in the spring, those should have been reflected as a yes underneath if they were an IEP student, or yes if they were a EL student and had a program services plan and were given those accommodations during testing. Those should be reflected. If they did not have any accommodations, it would have a no. And at this point, and remember in spring they all said no, because you had to go and change the no to a yes to be able to do that. And now you don't have to wait to make those changes in IC. You can go directly in there. If a student had an accommodation during the assessment, you'd be able to mark that as a yes. Make sure that the IEP and or the EL for our PSP students, any accommodations they had, also in that column has yes there as well. If a student did not, have any accommodations, then it should be reflected as no. And then remember that when for certain of our changes that you make in SDRR during data review on that student listing, and there's going to be a lot of things you'll be able to change directly on that student listing. But one of those that has to be approved by, is the when you're uploading the medical non-participation. You may be waiting on us to be able to approve or deny that for you, for what the information you've uploaded into SDRR. And we'll talk about that during non-participations of how to upload it, and I'll show you a screenshot and go through that whole process if you need to upload any medical non-participations in SDRR. Always, check, when that August 13th and the last day for you to be able to make any changes, submit any new tickets by noon. Make sure that you have downloaded what you've done in data review. And remember, when you download those, you can export them to Excel or etc. In or CSV file. You can also export them to that. However you want to download and export them to keep copies of everything. Remember, this task list, SDRR task list is optional. It is not mandatory for you to do this. It just kind of helps you, and you can check these boxes off as you go for your record. Remember, if something is blank, that means if it doesn't have a check mark in it, that means that those are tasks you still got to complete. And if you have checked a box and you have to leave SDRR and then come back the next day, those check marks will still be there on the task that you completed. Quick links. Let's look, because this is where you want to get into SDRR and look at all your student listings underneath quick links. You're going to be able to see all of them. You could click on that first one and it'll have all of these: access, alternate assessment, which is KPrep. And then you can also see our KPrep. You'll see, if you click on all, you'll see all 4 of them. If you click on the bulleted, each of the bulleted, you will only see those particular ones. And like I said, off of quick links, you'll be able to get to the download, to be able to download all of this information on the 13th, if any changes that you've made. Let's talk about tickets. Now, what are we going to see with our tickets? You're going to see, any new, underneath the new, that'll be any ticket, any new tickets that your district has, submitted in SDRR. You'll see one that'll say updated, more information. That means we're waiting on, we need some additional information for you before we can approve or deny that particular information that you submitted. Those tickets. And then you'll notice that there may be numbers where, next to your denied tickets. And denied means that we denied it, but remember, whenever we deny a ticket, we always tell you what should have been done in SDRR. And so you can't do anything to a denied ticket, but you can, if it tells you to submit something else in SDRR, do something else in SDRR, you can just do a new ticket and submit that information, and then it will look to approve or deny it. Then once it's denied, of course, you cannot do anything to it. It'll still remain in the system, so you can't delete those out, ever from the system. Just see what it says in the description of why it was denied, because we always tell you that, so you can do your next steps. Or if there's not any, steps, it'll tell you there's nothing, else, to do. Closed, that means everything is done. Closed out. Approved means those are the changes that you've submitted and have been approved. And then pending means that you're still waiting on us. And you'll notice that the difference between updated more information and pending are 2 different things. Updated more information is we're waiting on information from you, to supply us before we can move further. Pending means you're waiting on OAA to approve those. And you always want to make sure that you pay close attention to these tickets in SDRR. And notice that, if something was denied, what you need to do. If we need more information from you, please supply that. Or if you're still waiting on us, make sure that you're still not waiting on us at the end of, before the window closes, because you want to resolve all tickets before it closes in SDRR at noon on August the 13th. Now, once, if you didn't resolve anything, if you did not resolve your tickets, and you still had some that were still pending, or we were waiting on information, those tickets become denied tickets. And so there's nothing you can do at that point after it closes on the August the 13th. So, it's very important to make sure to look at your tickets and any changes you made. And remember, you as a DAC could be making changes, as a district assessment coordinator, or you might have your building assessment coordinators, your BACs, who are working in SDRR and making those changes as well. So just make sure everything is resolved before noon on August the 13th. You want to make sure at noon that you submitted all of those tickets. And then if there's anything that needs to be resolved, we will get back to you on that same day. And you will have to get that completed and finished before SDRR closes on the 13th. Remember, on the August the 13th, that'll be for tickets. You want to get all your tickets submitted by noon. Now, let's talk about some features of SDRR. I always like to remind districts about, the features of SDRR and what you can do in SDRR. You have there will be integrated search and filters. You will also see ticket history link for your students. So if you on that ticket history on your student listings, you'll be able to click on that and see any changes you have already submitted for a student already this year, as well as the ticket history that goes back 2 years prior to this year. And it keeps what tickets you submitted on that history for you. Also, like I said, you'll be able to edit most of your demographic fields during data review. You'll be able to click on hyperlinks, and like I said, when you got to that welcome and home screen page, you saw data review as one of your options, and you can they're hyperlinked to student listing, to your tickets, to transfer listing and download directly from that. Or you can click down and get, click on that anywhere in that box and get down to your task list as well. So remember, we've kind of hyperlinked that as well to go directly into your student listings. And then also to any tickets, is if you as a DAC want to review any tickets that's submitted for your districts, you can click straight on that hyperlink to that tickets, and it'll take you there to your ticket listing. Then you'll be able to upload your form documentation for medical non-participations. You'll be able to do that in SDRR. Remember that when you upload that to get to those forms, if you need that form to fill out, and before you want that form filled out before you upload that documentation for medical non-participations. And remember, those forms are that form is on the KD website to be able to get to that on the forms page, or also from the KPREP page of our KD website. Now I love this part of it, because then we're going to look at the features that I just talked about and go into a little bit more detail on what you're going to see. Up at the top, you're going to see where you could be able to search and filter Remember, if you're filtering by anything, you always want, if you're done, you always want to make sure you clear that filter before filtering to something else. And you can filter by any of those fields up at the top. District school, your SSID numbers, your students, you can even put, your the SSID number of a particular student and be able to filter to just that particular one. You will also be able to filter by, grade, lunch, IEP, information, EL, accommodations in your student listing. And so that's very important to be able to do. And you'll notice that on the screen here, underneath non-parts, you'll see that, when I told you that you were able to do non-participations by content for K-Prep and alternate K-Prep, you'll be able to see those in there and what you got, what non-parts you got, and what it was for what subject. So that's going to be useful to you. You'll be able to see to the right your ticket history of your tickets that have been submitted so far for each of these students on your student listings. Let's talk about some things that you're going to be doing on this student listing, because you'll see the actual test. Now, you won't be able to do anything underneath test. It'll just tell you what test you're working with on that student listing for that student. You'll be able to see the name of the student, first and last name, and you'll be able to, make any changes to that. Then, you'll look at, gender and race and be able to make any changes to those. You'll be able to make, file non-participations, look at lunch status, and change any of that information. Your IEP and your EL underneath that. Be able to change that quickly on the screen, and then mark to be able to be able to put in and be able to, and remember, it doesn't have to have back at rosters, you had to have a yes in that column underneath IEP or EL to be able to mark accommodations. You don't have to do that anymore, because you can click on accommodations, but you want to make sure that, when you do click a student has yes for accommodations, that you do make sure that the IEP or EL student did have a yes under that column as well. But remember, you don't have to wait on that anymore, like you did back at rosters. And then people say, well, Chris, I don't see anything about my 504 students. You won't see 504 students listed in our rosters, because that's not a federal requirement for reporting that we have to do. It's only for your IEP students and for your EL students that we have to report federally, whether they had accommodations or not on our assessments. Now, people did back at rosters, did during annotations, were able to annotate if a student had a 504, but you'll notice that, there's some features now that you won't be able to see during data review like you did for a roster phase. You won't be able to see, the annotations. You won't be able to add or delete a student during data review like you did in rosters. So, like I said, there's some unique things that happen for rosters, and then there's things that happen for data review as well. So try not to get those confused. That's why I try to point those out to you, the differences. And let's talk about uploading a medical non-participation. Oh, I did forget one thing. Back on your student listings, we'll talk about things that, you're not able to change, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. Uploading your medical non-participation. I told you I'd go through this process with you. What you're going to do is once you've got the medical non-participation off the KDU website, or if you'd already had it already filled out and forgot to submit it back in the spring, you'll be able to do that again during data review if you didn't do it back in June before it closed in SDRR. So now, if you've got a student who didn't test and you forgot to submit that, you would make sure that the form is completely filled out. Make sure that you have all your signatures on that medical non-participation that is required, because if you don't have that filled out completely and all the signatures on it, then we cannot process that particular one, and so you would have to resubmit it again with the signatures. So make sure it's completely filled out. What you're going to do is once the form is completely filled out, you're going to scan it into your computer. Once it is scanned, then you will browse and find it. You'll be able to choose, where it is located on your computer, and then be able to upload that directly into SDRR underneath that non-participation field on your student listing. And then we always like you when you upload that to also, because a lot of times it tells on the form from the, the medical perspective of the form. So we like you to also type in, from the school's perspective, any additional information that's happening with the student. And remember, it cannot be a handicapping condition for the medical non-participation for that particular student. Now, we do have a particular new non-participation in SDRR that we call roster cleanup, because this roster cleanup is going to be something new for you. Whether you did rosters back in the spring or you're brand new to the process of working with data review, it's going to be new for any of you, because this one is going to be address situations where the student appears on the student listing in error. And some of those errors, you're going to have to explain why the student was not. One of those could be why the student wasn't deleted from the spring roster. Because back in the spring, you were able to, like I said, add or delete students to your roster. Now, during data review, you cannot do that. So you would have to you would have to click in SDRR on your student listing underneath non-participation for that particular student on your student listing, and click in that box and then do the drop down to give you this roster cleanup option. And it will be as part of the ones just like medical or, or withdrew, during the testing window. All your, this particular one will be underneath those as well when you click on non-participations. And or if it's why the student appears on your student listing in error in the text box. So you'll have to, when you click on, when you go to your student listing, find the student, and you're probably like, well, why is that student showing up, in my spreadsheets that, or, why is the student still showing up, in SDR, in SDRR, because, they shouldn't have been, because, they may have moved, prior to your testing window and you forgot to delete them off the, annotate and delete them off the roster. So this will give you another opportunity to do cleanup, and it's called roster cleanup. And so make sure that you do fill that out correctly, and you'll have to type in the information of to explain why you're submitting this roster cleanup, non-participation. Now, and I'm going to show you, a screenshot of what that would look like. Because like I said, it is new, and this is roster cleanup. What you'll see is, when you go to your student listing, you'll go to find the student, go over to the right-hand side, and you'll see the non-participation field, and it'll be like a dash there. You'll double-click on it. It'll give you a drop-down, just like you see here, and you'll choose roster cleanup. And then it will give you a text box to type in, what should have happened back at roster phase. But remember, that's okay. You still get another opportunity to clean this information up. So please take this, like I said, this will be your last opportunity to be able to do any non-participations or change any demographics for individual students is during this data review time. And then once you type in your information of why the student wasn't deleted from the spring rosters, or why the student is still appearing on student listing, and one of those things that also, it could be that you didn't, like I said, you didn't delete the student off the annotate and delete the student off the roster who may have withdrew, prior to the testing window. And or it could, some things happen where, for access, you tested a student, you tested you had a student on your roster, and you're like, well, where'd this student come from? Because he's not EL. That could be another roster cleanup, that the student was not EL, and should not have been should not, of course, should never be tested with access. So because they were not an EL student, but they show up on your roster. So this is another example of roster cleanup too for access. And then once you put the information in the box, then you're going to click update, and then that'll come to us to look over and approve or deny it. So be looking for that one to be new this year. On your ticket listings, like I said, you'll be able to see all the tickets you submitted for your students. You'll be able to see who submitted that and requested that ticket, and submitted it, the date they submitted it, and also the date it was submitted, and any updated date will also be on there as well, and the ticket status. It'll tell whether it's been approved or denied, or it's pending or whatever. So that's a quick look to be able to see the status of your tickets is on the ticket listing by looking underneath that ticket status. And remember, you can view those tickets that you've submitted at any time. If you need to edit those tickets, you can also edit that during the data review process as well. And then if you did a wrong ticket on a student, you can also close that ticket out for that particular student that you may accidentally, submitted something for a wrong student. You can always close that ticket by choosing that. It'll be like a red X there when you, and you'll just click on that and be able to remove that that ticket. And close that ticket out. So I think that takes, like I said, there's going to be non-participations by test type, and we kind of gave you both examples for both K-Prep, and you'll see the differences between those. Some of them are the same. You have, student was expelled without services. You have the medical that's the same about both. And then you also see that new roster cleanup. You also have the one where the student was withdrawn after the testing window began. But then you'll notice some differences. Now for the first one with K-Prep, you're going to see that first year EL. And remember, first year EL students only had to take the K-Prep for participation only. And they had to participate in both mathematics and science. And so you should see where your participation rate for those students on those spreadsheets as well for your first year EL. And you will also see that first year EL underneath that non-participation if you already submitted those back in the spring for those students. And then a different one, if you look at the bottom one, that's you'll see it says test type ACCR. That, of course, that is going to tell you that you are on the access one. And you'll notice that this is a grade 4 student, and some of the differences between here are that IFEP that I talked about, or that RFEP. And IFEP member is initially fully English proficient, and that student had exited off of the screener, had gained that overall composite of a 4.5 on the screener to be able to exit in grades 1 through 12. Remember, our kindergarten students cannot exit until after access, after taking it. And then you'll see that one that says redesignated fully English proficient, RFEP. That means that student had already exited off of access and should not have been on your rosters in the first place. And they definitely should not have been tested who have exited already in previous years. So I think that clarifies some of the things on what you can do. Oh, I did forget to tell you that your tested students, when you look at their grade, that is one thing that you cannot change. Or your tested school, because that has to be, you have to send that to KDE assessment. And you'll notice that when I was going through the data review priorities on slide 5, that was one of those. There are certain fields that you cannot change on your student listing and data review, that you have to submit that to the KDE assessment at education.ky.gov, and we would have to look at that to see about getting those changes, because those should be what they were at rosters, and those should be correct. But if they're not, then you have to submit that to our data folks in our office. Underneath their general mailbox is KDE assessment at education.ky.gov. Now we're going to move into, remember how I told you that data review was also open, and then cohort, it has been open, is open as well. Starting August the 6th again, back to you, because it closed down and then reopens now for you to look at that, look at your 4-year and 5-year information for graduation rate. And this just tells you, to always, make sure to provide accurate graduation model, for the students following from their first year in high school. you know, as through their expected cohort graduation school year. And, you know, 4-year is, you know, I graduated on time. And this also tells you how to calculate the cohort graduation rate. And then, of course, your 5-year, who had, those are the students who graduated in 5 years, they had to take, you know, an extra time than their, you know, their actual regular graduation, you know, date of 4 years. So for 5-year cohort, you know, they're going to be the ones who have, and want to note that those are ones who have a regular high school diploma. So those are going to show up in your cohort. You want to make sure that you do, I know it's a quick turnaround, but you have from August the 6th when it opens at 9 a.m. to, you know, noon on August the 13th to review both data, do all the things for data review, and then for cohort. And then it's very important that we're going to spend a little bit of time about cohort, making sure that you do have the information reported correctly for those students as well, because you know, that could you know, affect your graduation rate. And then remember when I told you that you know, there will be aggregated data that will be coming on August the 10th. That will be part, you'll be able to see your graduation rates as well during that time. But, you know, when it opens on the 6th, you'll still be able to see graduation information as well as tested, you know, the spreadsheets. And then aggregate data will come August the 10th. Now, on your cohort student listings, you're going to see enrollment changes. Example, G codes should be made in Infinite Campus because remember when you assign a 12th grader, you know, or etc., a G code when when the student's going to be graduating, once you assign them a G code, they go into, you know, they're going to be reported for your particular district. And some people, and remember, it'll follow their last enrollment, primary enrollment, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You know, demographic changes should be made in SDRR. Of course, cohort does not follow, you know, 100-day rule, and like I said, you know, our focus for this year on data review is not our 100-day students. So, you know, you can review that, but, you know, you can look at that information, but, you know, your focus should be on your tested students and how, and it, you know, on whether they participated or not this year, because that's what's going to be reported in the school report card, is your tested data. Also, students track back to their A1, A5, or A6 school where the student was last primary enrolled. And I mean primary enrolled, you know, it'll say when you look in Infinite Campus and you look at the enrollment tab, you'll see that P will be there. That means primary enrolled. And of course, we track them back to where the student was primarily enrolled, their last primary enrollment, unless the student was a verified transfer or KSAC, or ward of the state. Underneath cohort, you know, your tickets to change reporting location for public reporting and non-participation requests in SDRR will require you to match IC enrollment records for approval. And that's why I said that, you know, it's a little bit different this time. So, you know, you'll be able to make the changes into your student listings, you know, for cohort, But remember, you want to make sure that IC also matches any changes that you made for us to approve those particular tickets when you're submitting those. And you'll notice that when you log into cohort and you jump down to your student listings, you'll also have your task lists and your student listings and tickets. You'll be able to see that information, and you'll also see when SDRR, when that data for cohort was last updated from IC, and that was as of July 31st in SDRR. So that's always an important thing that you want to look at when you're looking at cohort, is when was that data last pulled from IC to upload that information in SDRR. Changes to demographics in SDRR. This just gives you an example of how to go in and make any changes to your demographics. Here you can change your lunch status, and you'll be able to click on that on the student listings and be able to update that but you also want to make sure we will be checking IC when you put in those requests on your student listings for any of your demographic changes. Also, here's an example of the welcome and home page for cohort. Like I said, it looks similar to data review, but you'll notice that on your screen in red, you'll see underneath cohort, it'll say the on time status last updated and when we plan to update it again. So that's always important. And remember, this is your grade. Also, it will not only be your grades 12 students, it'll be all your grade 12 students, whether they graduated or, whether they have a G code or not. So students without a G code and completed graduation tab in IC are set to not on time status. So that's another important piece for your grade, for your graduation rate and your cohort data. Remember, you'll have a task list that's optional for what you're going to be doing. And remember, there's a lot more information that you're going to be, doing for cohort that's different than your student listings for data review. You'll see your quick links, you'll see your 4-year, 5-year cohort. If you don't select each one of those, if you select the all, you'll see you'll see all of the information for 4 and 5-year. Or you can just go directly to your 4-year cohort. Remember, those are the ones who graduated on time in 2021, and then your 5-year cohort, remember, had to have an extra year to be able to graduate. And that's always lagged back a year to 2020 is for your 5-year. You'll be able to download those. You'll be able to submit tickets. And remember, we will be checking the ticket status against what's in IC. Here's what your cohort student listing looks like. So you'll be able to see that information, and you'll see some same fields that are the same. You'll see the name, the grade, the SSID number, date of birth, gender, race, and ethnicity. But then you'll see the last school that was enrolled. You'll see non-participations to be able to do that. You'll see your if any of them had accommodations underneath the IEP or EL or lunch, underneath it, and you'll also be able to see your lunch status. Some of the fields that are different than the data review student listings is you got your diploma type. It'll tell you what your diploma type is. And remember, you have to have the regular, if you have any alternate assessment students that, because they don't receive, a regular diploma, You'll be able to see those and remember those students on who are alternate count against you, and those who are not on time to graduate also count, have some, count negatively towards you as well. You also will see the in status. You will see those different codes. You'll see, your graduation codes as well as your withdrawal codes, etc. And also you'll see your end date and whether your students who are on time, you'll see those as yes, and then you'll see the ones that said no on there. And then also you'll be able to see your ticket history as well. So just a few little, changes, and also your non-parts will be a little bit different for cohort as well, because you'll have some students who may be verified transfer students, and so you want to, that'll be something different that like I said, is different than data review as well. There are going to be lots of resources for you for SDRR. You're going to have this recorded training, also, to talk about data review and cohort. That's going to be open in SDRR. Also, it discussed your spreadsheets. Then you also have very important resource is that help button. And you noticed on some of my screenshots on those, you see that red button that says I need help. That is what I was calling the help button, and that's on every screen of SDRR. You can click on that to learn more information about cohort, about data review, how to do a non-participation, what do I see on my student listings, etc. What can I do during the data review process? And so, like I said, and then you can also look to by assessment types. You can look into about access, about K-Prep, alternate K-Prep. You'll be able to see all of those by assessments. And there's all of our other assessments as well will be on there as well underneath that I need help. But also it tells you, how to make changes and things like that. And like I said, it's going to be very easy during data review. Is once you get logged in, click on that data review or a cohort, whichever one you want to start with first. Click on that student listing and begin, your work and be looking over that information and make changes directly into that student listing. And then you also want to reiterate that you have to talk to your WAPOC to be able to get access to SDRR in your district, and be able to get to that single sign-in. Login information on the KDE web applications login site to be able to download your spreadsheets underneath student data detail. And you'll also see it'll be by your district and by your schools underneath student data detail. And then, like I said, on August the 6th, those spreadsheets you'll see will be graduation and test. And then on August the 10th, you'll see your aggregate data. Then other important resources for cohort is the cohort tool that'll help you know what those, if you're brand new, you don't know what some of the, those codes mean. Underneath that I need help button and underneath cohort tool will help you with that information. Underneath that I need help under cohort has all of the codes and what each one of them means. And then you also have the cohort tool to help you with verified transfer and things like that in different situations for your district. So look at all of those resources, get familiar. before you start the process of data review and cohort. And like I said, we do have, any information you have about cohort or data review, you can always contact our office. And you can see the number on the screen, as well as our general mailbox too, that you can send your questions to. And for DAC info for the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support, if you have any other data issues and also questions about cohort, you can send those questions to the KD assessment at education.ky.gov. Now, this concludes our presentation, but I just want to say a special thank you for all you all do for this review. You don't know how important it is, and all the support that you all give during this time. And you all do a great job, and I know it's at the beginning of the school year for some of you. And some of you may have not ever already started, but preparing to start for the beginning of the school year. So just keep in mind to complete this task during this time, because this will be the last time to be able to make any individual changes to your students. Is from August the 6th through the 13th. We'll have an email that will be going out Friday. That will have, detailed information too that I've talked to you about in this presentation, as well as in that special email on Friday when SDRR opens at 9 a.m. So you'll be able to see that information. Also get links to, to the resources that you're going to need as well for your work in data review and cohort. So I just want to say thank you again and wish you all a great beginning of the school year, and do not hesitate to contact our office, and we'd be more than glad to help you. You all have a wonderful day. Thank you.